Now, on to the conference itself. Our first speaker is Michael O'Sullivan, CMG, Chief Executive of Cambridge Assessment International Education, one of the 4 Cambridge Assessment Group education providers. Now, whether it be with a single school, a chain of schools, or a government, Cambridge International prepares school students for life, helping them develop an informed curiosity and a lasting passion for learning. Most of Michael's earlier career was spent engaging with the Asia-Pacific region, culminating in his becoming Director of the British Council in China and Secretary-General of the EU Chamber of Commerce in China. Since joining us in 2013, he's overseen the expansion of Cambridge International's education partnerships with governments around the world as they seek to improve their education systems. He's therefore the best candidate to open this conference by laying out a little of the territory we hope to cover. Michael.
Thank you, Bennett. Colleagues may be sceptical, but apparently I have the sort of face that encourages random strangers to ask me questions in the street. This happens a lot in Cambridge, so lots of people wandering around for various reasons. And I was just thinking how the type of question you're asked determines the way you react. One of my favourite questions is, can you tell me the way to Cambridge University? What's really good about that question is I can show my knowledge. It's an open question. There are many possible answers, but I'm quite confident dealing with it. So provided I'm not really in a hurry, my spirits lift when I'm asked such a question. On the other hand, when I'm asked, have you got 5 minutes to help me complete this questionnaire, I'm pretty cool. But the one that really provokes flight is, how are you feeling about your life? So questions stimulate reactions, and we'll come on to that because questions, of course, encourage learning. So I'm going to look at some of the purposes of questions in education. I'm going to illustrate this in my very short talk, it's just 10 minutes, with some real questions and indeed with the occasional video. And I'm going to finish with I think, quite a nice video clip which shows how a simple question can help real learning. It really boils down this to 2 propositions. Being asked good questions encourages and supports learning, and asking good questions helps us see what people know, what they understand, what they don't know, and what they don't understand. The importance of asking good questions, of course, has long been recognised, and when I say long, well before our era. But the common thread has been the need to think first about a problem rather than just jumping to an answer. We find this kind of understanding equally in the Socratic and the Eastern Confucian traditions of education. More recently, it was Einstein who said, if I only had 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. A good question asked in the right context can reveal a great deal. In fact, it can reveal far more information than a simple answer to the question would supply. So here's a candidate in the last London mayoral election who's just explained his passion for Indian films, no doubt hoping to please a certain part of the electorate. He's then asked by a savvy journalist, what's your favourite Bollywood film?
Say you're a Bollywood fan, do you have a favourite actor or a favourite Bollywood film?
Oh no, I wouldn't be able to. What do you think? No, I'm not going to give you one. I can't think of a favourite.
Think of a single Bollywood film or actor.
I can't think of a favourite. I love almost everything about Bollywood. I love the atmosphere, I love the colour, I love the excitement. I want as much Bollywood as possible here in London.
Well, we know how that ended. Questions make us think. They make us state what we know and reveal what we don't know. But not just any questions. Back in the 90s, research, for example, by Wood and Wood and by Ashman and Conway demonstrated in their experiments that the more pupils were questioned, the less initiative they showed in their responses. So how could this be? Well, most of the questions that they were using in their studies were in fact closed questions. What is it called? Where did it come from? What colour is it? What is the capital of? In contrast, an open question permits a range of responses. It solicits opinion, whereas a closed one implies that the teacher has a predetermined correct response in mind. So closed questions encourage recall, drawing on existing knowledge, but open questions encourage higher order thinking, to peruse novel thought. In educating children, we always need to understand how much they know, what they've learnt, what's going on in their heads, what are the gaps in their understanding. Now, we might fantasize that one day in the future we'll be able to find this out directly by some kind of brain scan, but that seems a long way off, certainly not available now. So the best thing we have is really good questions. Really good questions, I would say, should encompass at least some of the points that you see on the screen here. A good question helps us not only to think, but to reflect. It stimulates thought, it stimulates imagination. As we wrestle with the question, we reveal much about what we know, what we believe, and about our thought processes. As learners, we gain directly from engaging with such questions. We learn more. But for teachers, it provides valuable insights into our learning. Here's a video of a teacher stimulating thought in her classroom by avoiding the simple demonstration of memorized facts.
Do you think, though, that that bank has attracted the best people because they've managed to pay them the most money?
Yeah, they're looking for the greedy people.
Who are going to benefit their company most, and then just offer them these huge salaries in order as an incentive.
So they're trying to compete for the best?
Yeah.
So if you want the best, then do you have to pay for the best? Wouldn't that be the bank's argument?
Yeah.
But the best might
So
not always
does
be the best.
does that justify the huge salaries?
No, because the huge salaries maybe, but the bonuses no.
For learners, it's not just answering good questions, it's also about students' ability and right to ask good questions. So, for example, Rothstein and Santana in 2011 demonstrated that effective curriculums develop skills for metacognition, for convergent and divergent thinking, so that students can both answer and ask pertinent questions in all contexts. We know that powerful learning is where learners are able to ask their own good questions. So, setting up a good learning environment includes ensuring that learners feel able to ask those questions. And this can be a challenge in traditional educational settings. But today I'm not focusing mainly on learners' questions. No less important are the questions asked by teachers, with the focus being, what is the purpose of those questions? We know that good learning, teaching and assessment is at the heart of good education. But for assessment to work well, the questions used to test students' understanding need to have been well designed. This is true for both formative assessment, the questions teachers use every day in the classroom, and for summative assessment, the high-stakes end-of-year, end-of-stage tests in public exams. Now, speaking of formative and summative, I don't want to get into a big debate about terminology here, but I would like to point out that formative and summative are not, in my view, labels for different types or forms of assessment. Formative essentially describes a way in which assessments are used, while summative describes a way of reporting outcomes. Indeed, assessments in class can be presented as mini-summative tests if they're simply being used to establish where pupils are on levels and sub-levels. Conversely, end-of-year formal tests and public exams even can be used formatively, but only if teachers help pupils to analyse their performance and find ways to improve their learning. So it's vital for us to think not only about what questions we're going to ask learners, but also about the purpose of those questions. What do we expect the response to tell us? Questions can be for facilitating discussion questions, but they can also help us identify learning problems, diagnostic questions. They can tell us something about how a learner's understanding is progressing, that is Hingepoint questions, or they can enable us to judge whether learners are ready to move on, an exit pass question. I'll just quickly show you some examples of these questions, some good, some bad examples. This is a really great discussion question. The choices provide scaffolding. They encourage learners to analyse, discuss and think. It's not, for most learners, a particularly easy question. There is a right answer. You can tell me at the end or over coffee if you've worked it out. I must say I tried it out and it took me a while to work it out, but I'm really confident that I cracked it. I think another nice thing about this question is you could actually test the right answer with a simple experiment at the end of the lesson, see if it validates the answer that students gave. So effective learning, as Bruno demonstrated, takes place not when pupils are given solutions, but when they're presented with authentic problems to solve. Here's quite a nice diagnostic question, for which I must credit the mathematician Craig Barton and his Diagnostic Questions website. The right answer, of course, is B. But if a student chooses A, it doesn't just tell us that they haven't learnt it yet, it gives us some clues as to where the conceptual misunderstanding of fractions lies. So the wrong answer in a well-designed diagnostic question can be just as useful to the teacher as the right answer. Here's a bad diagnostic question. Why is this a poor diagnostic question? Well, the problem is this, that if a student believed that there are 100 minutes in an hour, they would still get the right answer, which is 350. How could you improve this question? Well, a very simple improvement will be to change the departure of the second flight to, say, 250, because then the correct answer would be 425. But if a student had the misconception that there are 100 minutes in an hour, so did it like decimals, they'd come out with the incorrect answer of 385, which would tell the teacher precisely where their confusion lay. Now, quickly, an example from modern languages, from Spanish. What we're trying to do with this question is to probe the understanding in the middle of a learning sequence. It's a great hinge point question because all the distractors, the wrong answers, have been chosen to illustrate common mistakes that first language English speakers make when learning Spanish. Now, the right answer is C, but this is a question that doesn't just test the correct pronoun, lo or le, but also where it's positioned in the sentence. It also meets the practical criteria for a good hinge point question. It can be answered in less than a minute, and it takes less than 30 seconds for the teacher to assess whether the student is ready to move on with their Spanish or not. And here's a good example of an exit pass question. This is a formative question used to elicit evidence about how well students understand the material they've just learnt in class. This, of course, is testing understanding of Pythagoras' theorem in mathematics. What's good about this question is that B, which of course is a right answer, is the usual way that the theorem is represented. But a student who is really on top of this, who has really got it, will recognise that there's another correct answer as well, D, because they really understand how the theorem works. It doesn't matter which way round A and B are. So you know that if the class are all getting both correct answers, then they are ready to move on. They have basically got Pythagoras' theorem. Now, whether used formally as part of a classroom activity or in a formal examination, a well-designed question provides rich information about what students understand and about what they don't understand. But on the other hand, a badly designed question not only tells us little, it may even mislead us about what students know. So I just want to leave you, having talked a bit about questions for a few minutes, with this question. You're an educator. How do you know that the questions your students are being asked are helping them to learn? Now, like most students, I've used up all my time in the examination. and it's time to submit to the judgment of others. But just before I do that, I'm going to leave you with a final example that I really like of a teacher asking questions in class simply in order to stimulate learning by the students. So this question has got nothing to do with measuring the students. It's got everything to do with helping them to learn. Now, in this class, it's a primary class, a game is being played in which the teacher has to select dominoes which are multiples of 3, and the students have to select dominoes which are not multiples of 3, and the one with the most dominoes will win the game.
So you think picking up a domino with a 6 on will always be a multiple of 3? Nothing add 3 is 3. Is this going to be a fair game?
No. Nah. You're going to win. Nah.
I'm going to win?
Yeah.
You think I'm probably going to win? Have a little look at what's left.
He's going to win.
I'm not giving up yet.
4 and 0.
Yep. You can chip in and help him. I'm hearing 4 and 0, Rory.
6 and 5. 6 and 4. 6 and 5.
Yeah, yeah. Can anyone explain why you think that might happen? Eve?
Well, there's a lot less possibilities. You can only get ones that add up to 3, 6 and 9.
Or
12.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy spending a day hearing and thinking about questions, and I hope you'll also ask some great questions later. Thank you.